Kia ora, welcome to Central News for Monday the 24th of March. I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller. Balloons over Waikato lifts off this Wednesday morning with an early morning mass ascension at Inniscommon starting at 7:30. The annual event runs until this Sunday with the premiere display, The Night Glow, to be held at the University of Waikato this Saturday, the 29th of March. And the Waikato Regional Council are again offering free park and ride buses for the event. They'll be run between the university and 5 sites around Hamilton from 4:15 on Saturday afternoon. Those sites are Melville High School on Collins Road, Frankton Primary School on Rifle Range Road, Grosvenor Park on Thomas Road, the Harrafield end of River Road and the CBD. At the end of the Night Glow, buses will leave on a continuous as-available basis until everyone is home. Full details are available on busset.co.nz. You've heard of row, row, row your boat, but what about row your pumpkin? Tomorrow at the Hamilton Gardens, Morrinsville farmer Tim Harris aims to row a 550-kilogram hollowed-out pumpkin across Turtle Lake. The hollowing out begins at 2 p.m. and he hopes to be on the water around 3 o'clock. If you can't make it tomorrow, make sure you head along to the Great Pumpkin Carnival at the Hamilton Gardens this Sunday from 10 till 2 on the Rhododendron Lawn. Cambridge is planning a right royal welcome for the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge when they visit on April the 12th. The Cambridge Chamber of Commerce is running a business competition for all Cambridge businesses with a shop frontage to dress their business in a royal, British or Kiwiana theme, or with both British and New Zealand flags. The winner will receive 2 tickets for the general seating area to attend the formal opening of the Home of Cycling's Avantidrome, which will also be attended by the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. In sport, a busy weekend saw both the Chiefs and the Magic heading across the Tasman, but only one team coming away with a win. The Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic won 49-44 over the Melbourne Vixens at Hisense Arena, putting the Magic at the top of the ladder with 4 wins from 4 games. The team flew home today and meet Perth team West Coast Fever in Mount Maunganui on Sunday night. The Chiefs were in Perth on Saturday night, suffering their first loss of the season, going down 18-15 to Western Force at the NIB Stadium. The Chiefs secured a bonus point in a game that saw them make 10 handling errors and concede 20 turnovers and struggle with their line out. The Chiefs are now in Johannesburg, where they meet the Bulls this coming weekend. And in the bizarre overlap of sporting seasons to cricket, the Northern Knights still have a real shot at a second title this season after defeating Canterbury Wizards by 15 runs at Hamilton's Seddon Park in the weekend to give the Knights a real shot at the Ford Trophy playoffs. Time to take a look at the marine forecast now. West Coast developing on Tuesday morning to a westerly of 15 knots. High tide in Raglan is 25 minutes past 5 Tuesday morning. Heading to the east coast, developing on Tuesday morning to a westerly of 20 knots, with high tide in Tauranga to 25 minutes past 2 Tuesday morning. Still to come on Central News, netball, Mad Vets and 100th birthday celebrations. That's next on Central News. Welcome back to Central News. Tauranga Hospital is celebrating its 100th birthday this month, and Hillary spoke with BOP DHB CEO Phil Camish to find out how the milestone birthday was celebrated.
Yeah, we did a number of things. I think the celebration was much more recognising what the staff have done. Innovation and excellence was the theme. So we presented staff with some coffee mugs, a commemorative book, which I think was probably the most important part of recognising their contribution and the contribution of their predecessors. The stories of what has happened here in the past, the stories of individuals and the change that's taken place in health. We also had the Minister here, of course, to unveil a plaque so that in future people will be able to go up to our roof garden, see the plaque and understand some of the history of this organisation.
Earlier in the year, you requested that people write in their memories and their family stories. What were some of the interesting ones?
Yeah, there were some really, really fascinating ones. For example, one of our big stories was a guy called Jim Savage, who was one of the last people to suffer from polio. And Jim was actually with us here. So in 1958, Jim contracted polio. It left him disabled, paralysed from the waist, moving around in a wheelchair. And yet from 1958 to 45 years, Jim was with us at the end of last week on the 6th of March to celebrate this hospital. Fred Hollows, we all know the famous eye surgeon, he did some of his training here in Tauranga. And in fact, it was his interest in ophthalmology started here. There's a famous story of Fred, who was always a pipe smoker in those days when smoking around the hospital was just part of how we did things. And Fred, not quite putting out his pipe, popping it in his top pocket and setting fire to his blazer. So some of those stories. We have another guy called James Lynch. James, as a 14-year-old, was down on the wharves. A sailor was being electrocuted. He pulled the sailor off, and in doing so, suffered damage himself. So James stayed with his family for a few more years. He was 14 at the time. And then in about 1957, give or take, James came into the hospital, no longer to be able to be coped with at home, and stayed with us for 47 years. So James was a person who was famous within the hospital environment, intellectually bright as a button, physically disabled, significantly disabled. So he lived here with us for those 47 years.
What were some of the common reasons for hospitalisation 100 years ago, and what's more common now?
I think people didn't live as long 100 years ago, so things that they tended to get were breaks, typhoid. Our first two patients were in fact enteric fever patients who had typhus or typhoid. Nowadays it's much shorter, much more chronic disease, much more the cardiac, the cancer, and those sort of areas. But I think the major difference is when you used to come to hospital 50 years ago, 100 years ago, you'll be here for weeks. Nowadays, you're here for hours and perhaps days. Technology has totally changed both what we can treat, how we treat it, and the period for which we have to treat it.
Eating yummy exotic food and picnicking with many others from the community became a bit of an institution over summer. The Mount Maunganui Gourmet Night Market was held every Friday night from December to the end of February. Hilary went along to sunny Coronation Park and spoke with the organiser, Kim Renshaw, to see what made the event such a huge success.
I think it filled a gap for something that we really needed in the Bay. It was the right kind of event for Tauranga. It was relaxed, it was laid back, and it was outside. Plus, I have to add thank you to the weather gods, because without that it wouldn't have been the same thing. So we were really, really lucky.
Why did you think that there was a need for something like this in the Mount?
I feel like there wasn't anything on a Friday night that was free for families. Most things around here involve going out and paying for things, going out to meals, socialising. On Friday night, nobody wants to cook. I think so that was a key thing, and also having the space. Like Coronation Park, as you can see, it's just perfect for relaxing, sitting down with family and friends.
For those who didn't make it to the market, can you explain what the atmosphere was like?
Oh, the atmosphere was amazing. You would see big groups of families, big groups of friends, kids playing, running around, live music, which made a huge impact. So really relaxed acoustic music, a really chilled out vibe, and very Mount. You felt like you're at the Mount. You didn't have to wear jandals, come and sit down on your blanket, and yeah, it was really chilled out.
How did it work with the vendors? Did they approach you? How did it kind of all come about?
Because I've worked in farmers markets for the last 2 years, I knew a lot of people in the sort of the market industry, and I cherry picked out the ones who I thought made the best food and who I also really thought were wonderful vendors. And then I went around to the local businesses and tried to get them to participate as well. So it was a combination of sort of knowing a few people and then going out there and pitching my idea, which was quite well received.
You ended up extending the market. What happened?
Basically, originally the plan was to do it always from December till the end of February. At some point in the planning I felt a little overwhelmed by doing it for a full 3 months, so I decided to bring it back to January. But because it was so popular at the beginning of January and the crowds were just continuing to come along, and I felt like they were really local people who were coming along, I felt like we could extend it. So we did. We just went back to the original plan of to the end of Feb.
How was the last one for the season? That was just a couple of weeks ago. How did that all go?
Oh, the last one was incredible. We had a theme of dressing up, so that was a big thing to start with. So all the vendors were dressed up in their sort of best dressed. We had about 5,000 people down here. We had about 200 kilos of rubbish that we produced, which means it was a really large event. And it was just a super exciting atmosphere that was sort of more of a celebration, I guess, of the full season.
Will you bring it back though?
Without a doubt, absolutely. We've already tried to book for next year, so we've got plans. We're making plans with the council at the moment, and you'll see us back in December.
But there is one last one though, isn't there?
Just one more sneaky little market that's coming along. So we've got a collaboration with the Earth Hour Market on the 29th of March, which is a Saturday night. It's going to be from 5 to 9:30, and then at 8:30 all the lights go out, and it's just going to be awesome. So that's one last gourmet night market until December.
Still to come on Central News, we discover more about Mad Vets 24/7, and next we speak with Marjorie Latto from the Morrinsville Netball Centre. Kia ora, welcome back to Central News. Morrinsville Netball Centre cannot operate a season without a president, and if one's not found before the end of March, nearly 800 netballers could be without games this season. I recently spoke with Marjorie Latto to find out what the role of president entails and why no one wants the job. Marjorie, welcome to Central News. Morrinsville Netball Centre needs a new president. You can't find one. What's going on?
Well, it's just so sad that netball players are not going to have a leader in their centre, and we just need somebody with leadership skills and authority to run the centre.
So you've got 7 meetings still to go in the season, and basically the role of president is to run those meetings?
Yes, that's their role, is to oversee all of those meetings and a planning meeting for the following year to coordinate the next year.
Do they have to liaise with Netball New Zealand, things like that as well?
Yes, they are all in the minutes and they get all the jargon, etc. But in saying that, Morrinsville is a great centre. It's got so many teams.
What will happen to those teams if you don't find a president?
Well, sadly, but they won't be playing netball. They won't be playing in the event centre or on the courts, because we have to have somebody, as it's stipulated in the Constitution, a president, secretary and treasurer.
Right, and you've got the secretary, you've got the treasurer, you need the president.
We need the president, somebody to look over them all.
Do they need a netballing background?
No, all they need to have is skills in running meetings. Well, it's not a big meeting. There's only probably about 6 or 7 at that meeting, so it's not a big thing. The big meeting's gone, the annual general meeting. So it's just appointing a president from people who are interested.
Do you think people look at the role of president and think, oh, they need somebody experienced, or, oh, no, I haven't got enough time, I can't do that? Do you think that's part of the problem?
It is, yes, it is finding people to make time. And it is time, I have to admit, but you can do it. I did it, 4 children, coaching, and still was president.
Do you think that, isn't there a saying that if you want something done, you ask a busy woman?
Dead right. What a busy man.
Now, what will happen if you don't, if it's the end of March, isn't it? Yes. Are you just going to call off the season?
Yes, we will have to find somebody by the end of March. Or, no, we won't push somebody into it. It's got to be somebody willing to do it.
Now, what will happen if you don't find, if somebody is interested in the role? Who should they contact?
They should contact Sylvia Smith, who is the secretary, or myself, who as patron, been there for years.
Fantastic, Marjorie. Well, I hope you find somebody. With over 800 netball players, I'm sure that somebody is going to step up.
They'll have to, because I'm sure they don't want to see netball finish.
And we don't want to see no representative teams from Morrinsville either.
No, all of those players just love it, and the coaches are there. It's just finding somebody to oversee it all.
Marjorie, thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
The dedicated work of a Tauranga Veterinary Clinic and Wildlife Trust will go national this month with the premiere of its own television series. Mad Vets 24/7 follows Dr. Liza and her team through the laughs and some of the sad times of running the two places. Hilary found what it means to be a holistic vet.
Holistic is a broad approach, so we don't look at simply symptoms and address just the symptoms. We look at the bigger picture and try and find what's the underlying problem here. We address things like nutrition, the environment, the stress levels of the animal, as well as integrating all the conventional medications and surgery that we could possibly use, and complementary therapies like acupuncture and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and osteopathy and homeopathy and herbal medicine. So we've got this vast array of tools, and our ideal thing is that we get to the root of the problem and stop animals from the need to come and visit the vet. So it's a kind of weird business model to work, because if we're doing our job properly, then our patients don't have to visit us on such a regular basis.
Animal Rescue and Rehabilitation Centre Wildlife Trust is another entity that you set up. Is that kind of like an ambulance service?
It's ARC Wildlife Trust, so it's a charitable trust that I set up 11 years ago, and 11 years ago I set up Holistic Vets out of the boot of my car, but being passionate about wildlife, I met with the Department of Conservation to figure out how I could help with wildlife, and I learned that there wasn't a lot of infrastructure in the Bay of Plenty to look after it, so we established this Wildlife Trust, and Holistic Vets has provided veterinary care for the wildlife that have come through the doors over the years, and ARC has a network of volunteers, and now a centre where we look after all of these wildlife and take care of them and have happy endings and get them back to their original habitat.
You say that there were some heartbreaking moments on the series.
Yeah, that's just the reality of the work that we do. Unfortunately, there is always a time where you've got to come across and work with death, and being vets, we have to relieve pain and suffering, and a lot of the time, especially when it comes to wildlife, one of the kindest things that we can do is stop the animal from suffering by putting it to sleep. And it's a very gentle and good way to go, because it's just simply drugs that put it into a deep anaesthetic, and I certainly reckon there's doggy heaven and kitty heaven and all sorts of other things that we don't really know exist, but I'm pretty sure they do.
I know you can't give too much away, but there is a special feline that appears throughout the series.
Yeah, there's a gorgeous ragdoll cat called Pisa, and she gets brought to us from up north because she's had an accident and she's paralysed in her back legs. And her local vet, as well as a specialist, have suggested that putting her to sleep is going to be the kindest option, because they don't see much future for her with such a severe injury. But her owners can't reconcile having to put her to sleep when, although her back end is terrible and can't move, her front end is bright and she's happy and she purrs away. And so they consulted us to see if there was something else that we could do because of the way that we work. So the series showcases Pisa and all the things that we do for her and her progress over time. And she's such a delight to work with. She's really made to be a star.
Up next on Central News, we catch up with Hamilton Mayor Julie Hardacre. Kia ora, welcome back to Central News. Hamilton City Council recently considered proposals for the 2014-15 draft annual plan, which included a 5-year plan for the Hamilton Gardens, maintaining city safety, developing the city's playgrounds and free swimming at city pools for the under-5s. I spoke with Mayor Julie Hardacre last week, who explained about the provision for playgrounds in this year's draft annual plan.
Yeah, so we spent a good part of last year working up a new plan for playgrounds across the city. What we know is we've got lots, about 86 of them, spread across the city, and they're varying conditions and different sorts of play equipment. What we wanted to do was to create a new policy that was really different for the city, and I guess responded to the fact that we are a city of families. We've got lots of kids live in the city, and we know that playgrounds are very, very popular. So what we came up with is a new concept of destination playgrounds across the city. So instead of having lots of little playgrounds everywhere, we're going to put some energies into the really great big destination type playgrounds that have shade and toilets and parking, as well as amazing play equipment. So we did a big survey, and what we found out was that mostly people travel to the destination playgrounds we already have, which is at the lake or at Claudelands Park. So why do people go to those ones? Well, they go there because you can spend, the whole day there. You can have a great time. The mums and dads and grandparents can sit around, chat, read a book while the kids are playing on amazing equipment. So our new policy is about that. And so what we've done in the annual plan is started the beginnings of transferring one of our ordinary playgrounds into a destination playground, and we'll be looking in the coming year about how we might start to roll that policy out.
Why do you think playgrounds are so important for a city?
Well, particularly for Hamilton, we've got lots of families and lots of kids, and what we know is section sizes are getting smaller. We also know that lots of kids nowadays, their caregivers might not necessarily be their parents. It could be grandparents or other people who are looking after them. We also know that kids like to be challenged and stimulated these days, and to get them out of the house, away from the computers and electronics. Playgrounds are a great place to go. When we did a survey, we found that lots of people go to playgrounds. It's a great recreational activity, it's safe, and particularly for the little ones, with playgrounds, they're often just for the littlies, and that's a good space to chill out for our mums and dads and grandparents while the kids play. So we did a lot of research into what people were doing, what kids were doing in the city, and this is what they told us they really want to do.
The council's also putting a lot of money and energies into city safety.
We are, so that's probably a number one priority right at this time is city safety, particularly central city safety. So we've come up with a package of ideas which I took to the council, and everyone's unanimous about having to put some more effort into this. I think the psychoactive substances has certainly had an effect on the ground, but lots of other behaviours as well. And I think the time has come for us to say, well, hold on a minute, we've been fairly sort of relaxed about how we've approached safety in the city. We've had a good camera network, we've had city safe patrols, but I think the time has come. People are saying to us, we want you to be firmer. We want you to have a lot more, rules and regulations about acceptable behaviour. It has been impacting on visitors to the city, and so some of this antisocial behaviour just needs to be stopped. And so we've put some more money into the budget for that, and that's about cameras and safety patrols, but also we're going to be looking at the way we enforce policies and bylaws. To date, we've been reasonably relaxed about those, and the councillors have agreed that the time has come to be a bit more firmer about those. So we're working with the police, lots of agencies, to have a good look at that.
You can find out more about Hamilton City Council's draft annual plan at hcc.gov.nz. Taking a look at the weather for the Waikato now. Hamilton, expect cloudy periods on your Tuesday with late showers expected and a westerly freshening, high of 23 degrees expected. Pāroa, fine with afternoon showers and a high of 24. Matamata, your high 22, and Te Awamutu expecting a high of 23 degrees with a low of 10 overnight. Tokoroa, cloudy periods for Tuesday, showers developing in the evening, westerlies freshening and a high of just 20 degrees. Heading to the Bay of Plenty now, with Tauranga expecting a mostly sunny day and a high of 24 degrees. Te Puke, mainly fine, brief showers overnight, westerlies freshening and a high of 21 degrees. That's Central News for today. Make sure you like us on Facebook, let us know if there's news or an event in your community. Thanks for joining me. I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller. Ka kite anō.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.